All right. It looks
All
like
right.
we have our fifth and final board member. Go ahead, Mike.
Great. All right. Welcome to our board meeting this evening. I'm suffering some COVID related illness at home, so I'm at home, and I've asked Stacy Begin, the vice president, to run the meeting this evening, and I'll be participating in the meeting, but I may have to get off camera at a point in time, so I appreciate her stepping up and taking the meeting. So Stacy, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you for doing it.
All right, no problem. Feel better, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right, so thank you to the board meeting tonight. We have over 314 people, and the number keeps creeping up, so I appreciate everybody joining us. Let me go ahead and report out on our closed session. Call to order, roll call. Let's do a roll call. Sorry about that. Raquel Alvarez. Here. Board member Eleanor Evans.
Present.
Board member Eric Joyce.
Present.
We already heard from Mike Blessing.
Present, yeah.
All right, all board members are accounted for. Thank you very much. All right, we're gonna go with 2B, public report of action taken in closed session. Public employee discipline, dismissal, release, Government Code 54957. The board unanimously voted to approve the dismissal of a classified employee, number 548529, for job abandonment. Item 2B, item D, public employee appointment, manager, Government Code 54956.95. The board unanimously voted to approve the appointment of Joshua Meyer as district's project manager. Congratulations, Mr. Meyer. All right, so we're moving right along to item 2C, the approval of the agenda. I'll call for a motion.
I'll move approval of the agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or concerns? All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None, I see. All right, so that carries forward. Sorry, my train is going by. Perfect timing. All right, so we'll go to the superintendent's report, 3A.
Dr. Begin, I yield my time as we will be presenting a lengthy presentation tonight under 6B, and all of the updates that I would provide will be contained in that presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Vitale. So moving on to item 4A, board reports. Do we have any board members that have a board report? Let me see a thumbs up if you do. All right, Eric, you're on.
Nice. It'll be a super brief board report. So I just want to say thank everyone for being here tonight, taking time out of your busy schedules. I know we're all flopped on our schedules, and I know that we've all been living with the ambiguity of what's going to happen in the future being unknown. So I just want to say thank you for being here, and we appreciate you.
Thanks, Eric. Do we have another board member report? All right, Eleanor, I'll turn it over to you.
I just want to remind everyone that if they have not done the census, to please do so. It closes September 31st. At this point in time, there may be a change in date, but definitely make sure you do the census, and also make certain that you're registered to vote. And quite frankly, I'm going to take a point of personal privilege and ask you to vote yes on Measure W for the Oceanside School District to improve quality of our schools, and also to vote yes on Prop 15, which will provide more funding for our school district. Thank you.
Thanks, Eleanor. Raquel, do you have a board report?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
I'm going to yield my time as well. Mike, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Oh, thanks, Stacy. Thanks.
All right, we're moving right through our agenda. We're on item 5, the general consent items. Do I have a motion to approve these?
I'll move approval of the consent.
Second.
All right, I have a first and a second. Do I have any discussion or questions? All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of moving the general consent items forward?
Aye.
Okay, it looks like we have a unanimous vote for 5 general consent items. So now we're moving on to the big topic of, we have over 345 people on that want some more information. So we're going to go to their presentations. We're on 6A, Proposition 8, Citizens Bond Oversight Committee's annual presentation to the Board of Education and the report to the community. And I see Dr. Soto is ready for that.
Thank you. Good evening, President Blessing, Dr. Vitale, and board. This evening, a representative from the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee will be presenting the 2019-20 annual presentation to the board. Representing CBOC is Mrs. Sherry Freeman DeLeva. Mrs. Freeman DeLeva will be presenting the information, and at this time, I will pass it over to her.
Good evening. I'm happy to be here this evening virtually to present this information to you. We should have the slides available. And so if we can look at slide number 2. Slide number 2 gives us a little bit of information about the CBOC. In January of 2020, the CBOC voted to change the date of this annual presentation along with the publication of the annual report so that it would coincide with other district reporting, which is conducted on a fiscal year from July to June. The report presented is in regards to the fiscal year 2019-2020. On June 3rd, 2008, Oceanside voters approved a bond measure, Proposition H, authorizing OUSD to issue up to $195 million in general obligation funds for the school facility improvements. And this enabled the district to complete repairs and modernization effort that was established originally in Proposition G bond construction program to provide high quality facilities for all Oceanside Unified District students. To oversee the expenditure of Proposition 8 bond funds, the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, otherwise known as CBOC, was established in the fall of 2008 to ensure that bond funds are spent in the purpose for which they are intended. Slide number 3, please. There are 2 main responsibilities of the CBOC. The first is to review expenditure reports to ensure that bond proceeds are used only for the purpose set forth in the bond measure. And second, to ensure that no proceeds are used for regular school salaries or operating expenditures. The second responsibility is to inform the public regarding the district expenditure of the bond proceeds. We are required to report annually to the Board of Education, as we are doing today. We need to report annually to the community, and we also need to share findings regarding district compliance as needed. The roles and activities are specifically defined in committee bylaws, and most importantly, the committee does not determine which projects are to be funded. Next slide, please. Members of the CBOC are unpaid volunteers appointed by the Board of Education. Each member may serve a maximum of 3 consecutive 2-year terms, and the CBOC consists of representatives from specific sections of the OUSD community. And you can see there on the bullets what those different sections are. As I said to you the last time I gave this presentation, I am the proud representative of the Senior Citizen Organization. Next slide, please. You can see there the names of all of our members, and I know since you have such a long agenda, I'm not going to bore you by reading to you, but you can see all of our members who were very proud volunteers that served this year on the CBOC. Slide number 6. The CBOC provides information to the community in various ways. There's the annual report to the community posted to the website in September, this annual presentation to the Board of Education in September, the CBOC website, as you can see, and CBOC meetings, which are open to the public. All reports are posted online, and they are available in a printed version upon request. And members also respond to questions from the community. Slide number 7. Regular meetings during the 2019 and 2020 fiscal school year. Regular meetings were held in the district boardroom, including the meeting on June 2nd, which was held virtually as well. The meetings were open to the public, and all the agendas and minutes were posted to the website as listed on the slide. Slide number 8. Slide number 8 is the budget breakdown of Proposition H. As you can see, the Proposition 8, the total budget was more than $262 million. And of that, Proposition H, the expenditures for this year were 196 million plus. There's a remaining Proposition G funds that you can see of 14 million, and other sources that were 50 million. And the other sources, as you can see in the little square, included state funding, other grant funding, etc. The expenditures as of June 30th of 2020 show that more than $195 million were spent in accordance with bond regulations. There's another 3 million that has been encumbered, which leaves a remainder of 63 million dollars still to be spent under the Prop 8 funding. Slide number 9, please. The independent certified public accounting firm of Christie White and Incorporated conducted the independent performance and financial audit for 2018 and 2019. The 2018-19 audit opinions showed that internal controls met financial and compliance objectives, that interest income was properly allocated back to bond fund, that expenditures were in compliance with the terms of Prop H, that site walks confirmed successful completion of projects, and the auditor did not identify any findings, which is always a good thing.
COVID symptoms is the temperature only, right? Very cautious, right? I'm not on my deathbed.
I'll just continue, but the COVID information is always good.
The
The next bullet shows that 2019-20 audit will be performed during the first quarter of the year 2021, and complete audit reports are posted on the website. Slide number 10. Activities for 2019-20 that were completed as a result of the bond project funds were included the upgrade to the softball fields at El Camino High School, the gym roof and HVAC replacement at El Camino High School, the improvement of Truax Theater lobby, and the asphalt repairs at McAuliffe Elementary. The CBOC reviewed bond project budget and expenditures, bond program third-party audit report, bond issuance and refunding, long-range facility master plan, and bond strategy. Slide number 11, please. You can see on this chart that I promise I'm not going to read to you. This is a summary of all of the accomplishments of Proposition H beginning in 2009-10 school year, where Del Rio and Lincoln were modernized, which seems like such a long time ago. And you can see every year the modernization and the improvements that were made to many of our facilities in the Oceanside Unified School District to improve the facilities for Oceanside students. And you can see it ending there with 2019-20, the improvements that I mentioned to you. And there's a nice empty block there to show the kinds of, with a little bit of space for things that we can do for the upcoming year. Slide number 12. For the 2021 year, as I said, the program plan is to oversee the status of spending on projects taking place during this fiscal year, including gym upgrades at El Camino, performing arts building improvements at El Camino for the Truax Theater, the gym roof and HVAC replacement at Oceanside High School, modernization at San Luis Rey Elementary School, modernization at Jefferson Middle School, The plan is also to review expenditures for long-term projects. And in addition, we need to recruit a new CBOC member because we currently have one vacancy in the category of Oceanside Small Business Owner. And the details and qualifications are listed on the website in case there is anybody that is listening to this presentation virtually who would be interested in applying for that vacancy. This concludes the report of the CBOC. And if you have any questions, I can try to answer them. And I know Dr. Soto is also here to assist in answering any questions anyone might have.
All right, so just so how things are going to go, where you guys can have an opportunity to ask questions. We have one public comment on this item, and then we'll have a board discussion if needed. So do we have any questions from board members for Shannon, or Dr. Soto?
I'm good.
I wanted to say thank you to all the CBOC members that are on there. Many of them are parents and community members. That's a lot of work that you guys have been doing over the years to make sure that these projects happen and that there's transparency with them. So thanks for that time and involvement.
Are you ready for the public comment?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Larry Berry.
I just wanted to remind you, public comment, you're limited to 3 minutes. And I know we've heard from Mr. Berry several times, so he knows the rules.
Not in the audience, there is a person named Larry, but with no last name. Then I promoted him to panelist. If this is Mr. Berry, you can go ahead.
All right, somehow I got muted. Can you hear me, Stacy?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
All right.
Yeah,
I disagree with a lot of what the presentation had to say. One of the things you left off the schools that we built on Camp Pendleton on that ledger there. There was all that money that the taxpayers of Oceanside paid to build those schools, and we never received 1 penny, not 1 penny from the DOD and the base Camp Pendleton. So when people start crying about San Luis Rey and Garrison and Jefferson and why we have no money, it's because we built those schools in San Margarita, and I listed the other school up on on the base there as well, that we don't have any money to help them with their schools. I also have a problem with Shannon Soto. I keep asking her for the last 8 months to get a number for this, that how much real money is there. And it doesn't show that the money, it doesn't come up, doesn't figure into how much money we have to go on to the next project. It seems like it's just a bunch of phony money. So I think we got problems there, and we're heading for a disaster, a fiscal disaster. I think we should, and I just found out today about the bond issue, and our rating is just dropped tremendously for our bond rating to get money. So I think we gotta really crack down. And I've always said this as being a member of the CBOC. This is when the money gets tight. This is when the rubber meets the road, and this is where people screw up a lot, and we end up screwing over the taxpayers. So I would like to see a definite. Nobody runs your checkbook the way that the Oceanside Unified School District plays with this money. I want to know exactly how much money we have, not this money that we're promised, not this money that we think we're going to get. I want to see the money that we actually have in the bond that's left. Those numbers already tell me that there's no money left in the bond, and it's always this money from the state, which we know the state's going to screw us over. So I'm just hoping that we can, go at this with some honesty and with some integrity about what we're going to do with this, with the bond, the remaining money on this bond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berry, for your public comment. Do we have any questions or discussion between board members?
I would just ask staff, I would offer a retort out to Mr. Berry's, from my just common knowledge and understanding it, and Shannon can correct me and other board members as well. Of that Prop H bond funds, we've spent all but 40 million of it. We've got 25 of it committed, or 20 of it so much committed to San Luis Rey remodernization, 15 to 20, and another 20 or so committed to Jefferson work at the remodel there. And then we're out of the money. If staff would clarify that for us and for Mr. Berry.
You are correct, trustee. We approximately just over 50 million remaining in Prop H. We have some money that's encumbered already through El Camino, the projects on that campus, the Chiracs, the gym as it's coming to completion. We have a couple of small projects over at OHS that needs to be addressed as well. So yes, we're looking right about between 50 and 55 million based upon how the projects go, but we have budgeted out for San Luis Rey and for Jefferson. And we'll be bringing a project update for San Luis Rey in October. But yeah, we're running lean.
And also, I would point out too, I know for a fact, Larry always likes to say that we have 3 base schools that got funded from the bonds Prop H. Actually, North Terrace serves base students, but it also is in Oceanside too, and it serves Oceanside residents. So technically it's an Oceanside school citywide as a school and serving Oceanside residents, if that makes a difference. But that was a conscious commitment to the Defense Department and the way that the feds fund their programs to build and make those schools decent for our military families that we needed to serve. So I'm proud of those decisions and stand by them. And we are in a queue for a potential rehab funding of one of the base schools in the next 10-year cycle, as I understand it, from federal allocation sources. So hopefully we'll be changing that.
Do we have any more questions or discussion?
So as I read that, it said that San Luis Rey and Jefferson are both going to be worked on this year, this school year.
We are actively working on the modernization right now with San Luis Rey, with getting ready to continue the conversations regarding Jefferson. And you'll be receiving an update on Jefferson as well in October. So yes, we have plans to continue those conversations and moving those projects forward. They won't be completed in this coming year, but they will continue to move forward in the modernization process.
And you'll be getting a lot of good details on SLR at the October meeting, and bigger picture details on Jefferson. We're a lot further along, of course, at SLR than we are in Jefferson.
Great. I'd move approval and acceptance of the report if that's on order.
No vote needed for this item tonight.
Okay.
It's just informational. So appreciate the enthusiasm though. So we're going to move on to, if we have no more questions or discussion, thank you for your time. We are going to move on to 6B, the
Thank you for presenting.
Yes. OUSD Board of Education COVID-19 update. This is going to include a staff presentation that is rather lengthy. We're going to be able to ask questions to the staff as we go through this. Then we're going to take public comment. I think we have almost 10 public comments on this item, and then we'll head into board discussion to set direction. So I just wanted to make that clear for our audience. We have 389 folks joining us tonight. So I'll turn it over to staff for the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Begin. We'll go ahead and take a second for the presentation to be displayed on the screens. And tonight we will be providing the Board of Education an update on COVID-19 and our educational program. And it is a little bit lengthy because we do want to tell the story and start from the beginning. It's a very good place to start. Next slide. Couldn't resist that reference. Sorry. some levity in some very difficult times. So we've brought several reports to the Board of Education since we been dealing with COVID back in March. We've brought 9 different presentations to the Board of Education. In addition, we have created an entire website dedicated to COVID and the reopening process, where all of our updates and communications and presentations are housed. This site also supports the latest guidance documents referred to later in this presentation. And they're always the most updated documents. So on the next slide, you will see the beginning of the COVID process, going all the way back in January when we had the first case here in California. The red arrows represent the various updates and actions from the county and the state and other outside organizations. And the blue represents the actions and updates by the Oceanside Unified School District, beginning with Friday, March 13th, when we announced schools would close, and we did close schools by March 16th, the very next Monday. We started serving pickup meals to our community on Tuesday, the 17th, just 4 days after we closed schools, and we've served over 800,000 meals to our community since March 17th. By March 18th, we were providing printed packets and supplies to our scholars. On the next slide, you will see, and I'm obviously not mentioning what's on every single point, but every single point was some kind of change or some kind of something that we needed to react to and respond to. Back in May, we began with our 23 work groups to study reopening, and we held various other meetings to gather stakeholder input. On the next slide, you will see that in the month of June, we actually started receiving guidance documents from the California Department of Education, the California Department of Public Health, and the County of San Diego. And in July, we started receiving updates to all of these initial documents, and those updates have continued all the way through September. In July, we also received notification from the California Interscholastic Federation officially delaying all fall sports until December. On the next slide, you will see the last bit of guidance and directives. On August 17th, OUSD started our virtual learning district-wide. We've distributed over 10,000 devices, and there'll be more updates on that later. And on August 24th, we opened 6 schools with our expanded enrichment for K-5 students. On August 28th, the governor announced yet another set of reopening rules. And on September 1st, San Diego County was officially removed from the watch list. On the next slide, you will see some of the documents that have guided reopening. Through all of these documents and changes and updated guidance, we have continued our reopening work. We started back in May with our work groups, and we continue to prioritize safety. Tonight, we will give an update on our virtual learning, our operations for safety, information on COVID, and our phases for reopening. While we know none of this is perfect, we will point out some of the bright spots and also some of the challenges that we faced. With that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Lovey, who will talk about with her staff the virtual learning progress that we have made over the first 3 weeks. Dr. Lovey.
Good morning, good evening, Board of Education. Thank you so much. I will be joined by our Senior Director, Mrs. Gravlin, our Director of Student Services, Dr. Sparks, and our Director of Secondary, Dr. Lawrence. We will be giving you an update on our progress. At this point, I will now turn it over to Mrs. Gravlin.
Executive Cabinet. It's my pleasure tonight to speak to you in regard to the dedicated elementary school teachers, along with support staff and administration who have spent countless hours to provide a high quality education for all students that are in their care. The first 3 weeks of school have focused on establishing a positive classroom culture, developing classroom routines, and ensuring students and their families are comfortable using their online tools. caring for both the academic and social emotional needs of our students is an absolute priority. To that end, each elementary school begins their morning with a message from the principal and welcomes students to school to help set the tone. Classrooms begin their day with a morning meeting, and students are welcomed and embraced into learning. Teachers and support staff have participated in professional learning opportunities to advance their skill sets in order to instruct in this online environment. The core adopted curriculum is being delivered through the instructional platforms of Google Classroom and Seesaw. Students engage in live daily interaction with their teachers and peers via Zoom and Google Meets. While there have been challenges, through collaboration, creativity, and perseverance, our staff is moving forward with virtual education. And right now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Lawrence.
Good evening. Over the last 3 weeks at the secondary level, the students, teachers, support staff, and administrators have worked hard to enter the school year with optimism despite the circumstances. Our teachers have engaged in professional learning to overcome barriers and anxiety when it comes to technology use. Our school leaders have strived to find ways to acknowledge students for their leadership and engagement shown during this time. And our teachers have worked long hours to provide consistent support for students through the use of Google Classroom, Apex, Zoom, and online curriculum. We acknowledge the challenges and know that we cannot replace the traditional learning experiences that are on our campus, that on-campus learning provides. Our secondary teachers, support staff, and leaders have shown great determination to ensure that we create the best virtual learning experiences for students while we are within this virtual learning structure. This includes for our teachers a consistent way in which they present the agenda for the day. Students enter their classes, receive virtual learning. Also, our students during the day have an opportunity to engage with our teachers through advisory. Although some of our students or our staff have found that our students who come to us oftentimes with their screens off, often turn their screens on during advisory time, making that connection and wanting to see that connection. As we continue to go through these challenges, we want to continue to say that we're providing the best supports for our students. Thank you. Now to Dr. Sparks.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. So our focus as a district, and particularly out of educational support services, student services, and with some of our partners like transformational consultants, has been focusing on how to engage students, connect students, and intentionally support them along the way. This obviously began back in March when schools closed abruptly and has continued through the launching of our virtual learning options this year. So our focus has been to engage students with an understanding that they want to be here, that they're excited, that there's a reason and there's a purpose for learning, to connect students through either Wi-Fi, through tools, or through relationships, and then to provide intentional support. So when a student might disconnect or disengage, they'll know that someone has their back. We've prioritized this work around 3 areas in particular to begin. One is looking at our foster homeless youth list. So these are youth who are identified as foster homeless, and we prioritize looking at them first to make sure that they were connected to school, that they had the devices, resources, and tools necessary to be successful. The second list we looked at was our SARB list. These are students who are have a student attendance review board contract, meaning that they may have had attendance issues in previous years or attendance challenges in previous years. And we've combed through that list, and we have prioritized reaching out to those students who are showing up on a regular basis during virtual learning to celebrate them, to tell them that they're doing a great job and thank you for coming to school on a regular basis, even though we're in a virtual setting, and to find ways to support students who may still be having challenges with attendance. The third list that we focused on is through our no-show or drop list. These are students who at some point were enrolled with us to be, or registered with us to be enrolled, and did not show up to school within the first week of school. And we would follow up with these students and figure out, are they still with us? What school are they going to? What support do they need to get connected? Is there a connectivity issue that we can support with as well? To that end, we have prioritized those 3 lists. We've done more than 300 phone calls. We've conducted at least 40 home visits in the past 2 weeks. And we have well over 1,000 requests for Wi-Fi connection that our IT team is working on currently. Next slide, please. We are monitoring attendance still in our virtual learning model, and we're doing this carefully. In the first 3 weeks of school, we have achieved a 97% attendance rate as of September 4th. Now back to Dr. Lawrence.
Thank you. We are using 2 online platforms to support our virtual learning. These platforms are Seesaw for our TK through 2nd grade levels, mild to severe classrooms, and Google Classroom for grades 3 through 12. As of September 3rd, 4,000 students have been active in Seesaw, and 69,855 logins through Rapid Identity have been logged in through Google Classroom. This demonstrates active use of our 2 platforms by teachers and students. Now to Mrs. Gravelin.
Instructional resources page is home to support for our educators as they instruct online. The elementary pacing guide, which outlines core academic instruction and social emotional supports, has been visited by 507 individual teachers. The virtual learning support site for staff has had 1,471 people viewing in the last 90 days. These resources are developed for teachers by teachers. The website is ever changing and growing, with additional resources being added on a regular basis. Now I'm off to Dr. Sparks.
Thank you, Ms. Gravelin. We've continued with our supports for our parents and guardians by leading 6 different sessions that have focused on the different tools and communication tools available to our families. We've held 6 sessions that have ranged from Blackboard and Rapid Identity to Seesaw and Google Classroom, which we've heard a little bit about, and then to our assessment platforms, Go, Math, and iReady. Then also our student information system, Aries, Apex, and Benchmark, 2 of our other instructional platforms. These sessions were offered during the afternoon and evening in both English and Spanish simultaneously. And we've had over 251 parents and guardians participate in our sessions so far, which will be ongoing. And these Parent and Guardian Academy sessions were recorded and shared on the OUSD YouTube channel, which any parent or guardian can access. Now back to Vicki.
My camera. OUSD virtual support teachers offer accessible academic instruction for students across all subject areas. The evening hours provide students the opportunity for academic support after their classroom teachers' instructional blocks. Students are able to request personal tutoring, appointment times occurring between 1:30 and 3:30. From 4 to 7:30 p.m., students are able to drop into the open Zoom room and ask questions and receive tutoring around any subject without needing an appointment. Links to both options for support, as well as teacher-created instructional video tutorials, are accessible on the Virtual Support Teacher webpage. Next slide, please. In addition to the tutoring session, virtual support teachers proactively reach out to families across the district. The team, pictured here, log their services provided in order to disaggregate and analyze data to continually improve the support model. And now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Moon.
So on the instructional technology front, we'll share a few metrics with you and some updates as to what we have for a few programs. Beginning with the week prior to the opening of classes, over 10,500 devices have been distributed to students. The devices are a mixture of newer and older iPads and newer and older Chromebooks. To date, all device requests have been filled. That said, some of these devices are past end of life and are struggling to meet the demand of the applications that students are attempting to use. This is an immediate challenge that I'll speak to in a moment. Prior to addressing some steps we can use to mitigate these short-term challenges, I'd like to take a moment to step back and remind the board where we were and where we are going. In October of 2019, last October, you approved a 3-year plan to refresh technology used for teaching and learning in OUSD. That plan calls for the planned systematic, methodical replacement and upgrade of hardware, software, and infrastructure, again, over a 3-year period. You also generously directed that an annual instructional technology budget would fund the plan. Prior to the passage of that plan, OUSD was without a technology plan since 2013. The current plan calls out that over a 3-year time frame, teacher and student devices be replaced and put on a predictable refresh cycle. When the world changed in March, our plans were initially put on hold because of the dire financial outlook we were given in April and May. But with the passage of CARES Act and the learning loss mitigation legislation, we've been able to move the timeline up for student device replacement. We currently have a new Chrome device ordered for every student in OUSD with a planned expenditure of about $3.9 million for those devices. We are currently at the mercy of the supply chain as the worldwide demand for Chromebooks exploded, with all other school districts being put in a similar situation to ours. And it's quite possible that our devices won't arrive until November. In addition to the device expenditure, we also have added classroom management software and video conferencing upgrades with a cost of about $243,000. So I believe, present pain and challenges accepted, by the time we end the first semester, we'll be substantially ahead of our original planned timeline. Going back to the short-term issue of many devices being at end of life and struggling to keep up, this afternoon we took delivery of an order
training. And what this device is, it's like similar to a mini iPad. It is small in nature, about 3 by 5. And what this does is it fixes to an object. It can be affixed to possibly a tripod. It could be affixed to a signage. And what this does is the scholars and staff are able to walk by it quickly without having to be temperature checked with our handheld temperatures. And that will indicate the temperature quickly and rapidly so that we can move through many employees and scholars during this temperature check period. Next slide, please. Custodial staff will be cleaning and disinfecting frequently touched surfaces in all classrooms and offices daily. These surfaces include door handles, light switches, sink handles, bathroom surfaces, tables, and student desks and chairs. This cleaning and disinfecting will be manually maintained by our custodial staff through approved EPA cleaning solutions while it's being applied and then wiped off. Our cleaning solution should remain on surfaces for up to 3 minutes for maximum effectiveness. This is the practice we are currently engaging with until we receive our electrostatic backpacks. Next slide, please. This is a picture of our electrostatic backpack sprayers that have been purchased for each site. These are en route and we are expecting to have them mid-September. And these were already purchased. We are waiting and we have been patiently waiting in the queue for these to arrive. These provide electrical charge solutions, allowing them to wrap conductive surfaces with an effective and even coverage. Double charge particles envelop all of the surfaces, and then it does not need to be wiped down. However, the solution does need to remain on the surface for up to 3 minutes, as was indicated previously as well. We are proud to say that to address this ongoing cleaning concern, we will be providing additional custodial support, one at each site, so that we can disinfect and provide extra cleaning on a daily basis. Next slide, please. These are examples of our plexiglass barriers at our school sites and our district offices. These plexiglass are already installed at many school sites and will continue to be installed this coming week. We are proud to say that this will allow some barriers between interactions with others, in addition to the cloth mask as is indicated here. Next slide, please. We know that the hand sanitization is a priority for safety. Hand sanitizers are available and are already at our school sites. They are available for our classrooms, for our front offices. They'll be near restrooms and the entrances of cafeterias as needed. Next slide, please. 80 portable hand washing stations, which is approximately 3 to 5 stations per school site, have been ordered and will be delivered in mid-September. This will encourage hand washing and assist with social distancing within the student restrooms, and these will be located in various locations throughout the campus. Next slide, please. We're excited to announce that, as we've heard previously, that universal feeding will continue. This is an awesome opportunity to continue feeding our families and our scholars. So we have been able to offer at all school sites on Tuesdays and Thursdays from noon to 1:30, with no cost to our families, the extension of universal feedings. So as Dr. Vitale mentioned previously, we have already served over 800,000 meals, and we look forward to continuing to feed our scholars through this time. Next slide, please. Now we'll begin to move into the COVID expenditures, the one-time revenue and expenditures. Next slide. Thank you, Mr. Moon. What this slide indicates is, we've shown this previously before with Mr. Golden. This is actually the sources of revenue that has been received and allocated from the CARES and from the learning loss mitigation. OUSD is entitled to approximately $18 million in revenue, one time only. Next slide, please. And as been indicated earlier, we have already begun to spend our 18 million. We've spent almost approximately 15
with staff on a couple projects inside of the school district. First, want to say I thank everyone who has worked very hard during this COVID crisis in the sense of supporting our students and supporting our teachers and supporting our staff. But my fear is this, is that what has happened at San Diego State with the premature return to campus and the COVID outbreak that's happening there, what happened also inside of Oceanside Unified School District. And my fear is this, is that, say, for example, with elementary school children, if they return back to school, the expectation is that they don't touch anybody, they can't play at recess, they can't do PE, they can't do all the normal activities on a day-to-day basis that they have done previously. And they're just supposed to sit there, not touch anything, keep them to themselves, wear a mask. And that's not a reasonable expectation of anybody that's in elementary, middle, or even high school. That's just not, that's not a reasonable expectation. And I know it's very difficult. I would be the first person to say, I want all of our kids back in the classroom where it's easier for them to have instruction, and it's easier for the work-life balance of most parents and guardians here inside of our district. But on the same respect, on the inverse, we have to protect our kids. We have to be risk adverse in the sense of protecting them from this virus, because at the end of the day, we do not want an outbreak where it's transmitted to our kids, to our teachers, to the staff, and we have a whole another mess on our hand that we cannot mitigate, and it becomes a lot bigger than what we're trying to do right now. So I'm in full support of staff. I'm in full support of the administration, of Dr. Vitale, Dr. Lovey, and of the board of keeping the schools closed, doing the virtual learning until it's to a point where we know it's going to be safe and it's not going to be harmful for our students and our scholars to return back to our school campuses. And that's the end of my comments. Thank you, everyone, for letting me speak.
Thank you, Michael.
Next speaker, Kevin McCarthy.
You're on, Mr. McCarthy.
Okay, would you please reset the clock? Because I've been watching you And when people are having problems connecting, you start the clock and they lose 20 seconds. Number two, I want to tell you that my wife wanted to speak and you didn't bring her on board. So you're basically denying our constitutional right to be able to be or have our voices heard. So reset the clock, please, starting now, so I can say what I want to say. This board meeting meets, is it starting right now? Just let me know, please.
Yes, it is.
This board meeting is meeting monthly now. Once a month, I get to tell this board what I think. First, why aren't you meeting weekly? We deserve to have more updates and opportunities to address this board. This is supposed to be a crisis with people dying left and right, like what the guy who just got on was talking about. This is like a mayhem, you know. But actually, it's really nowhere near that situation. I'm not going to go into the numbers, but effectively for young people, there is 1 in 10,000 deaths. That's 1 in 10,000. That's like that's lower than the flu ever was. And in San Diego, over the past 6 months, 0 children under the age have died. That sounds like a lot, but if you go back to 2018, there were 6,500 people who died of the flu. Dr. Lovey is inaccurate on 2 points. There are over 5,000 children today under 18 who have been confirmed with COVID-19. And the number of hospitalizations has actually dropped to near 0 in week 36, which is the beginning of September. So what's my point? My point is that COVID-19 has minimal impact to children under the age of 20. This is backed up by the CDC, which states virtually the same points. A board member recently called out a parent and chided her for having a cavalier attitude towards returning students to the classroom. I would say that it is a board member who has a cavalier attitude. What makes her think that her opinion is less valid, the parent, or scientific than what makes the board member think that the parent's opinion is less valid? And why was she chastising that parent? I think this is an overall indication of the board's cavalier attitude and response to parents. What's my beef with the board? These are my kids, and I pay for the school board and the teacher's salary. 53% of parents said they wanted to go back to in-classroom, and 80% of teachers want to go back. Yet there's no plan for returning our kids back to the classroom, where I believe is the best place for them to get the education that we paid for. They're not getting that education. The problem? My wife and I cannot spend 100% of our time acting as a teacher for my kids. I have work, which I have been hugely pulled away from in order to monitor and attend to my students' education. What are other schools doing? Carlsbad is opening up for full-time classroom education starting on September 22nd. And Vista has plans to reopen on October 20 for in-classroom education. But this board has not made it clear when we are going to go back to classroom education. Our children are becoming addicted to computers thanks to this overemphasis and reliance on computer learning. My kids average 12 to 14 hours of screen time per day with slighter amounts on the weekends. And my high schoolers have assignments due on Sunday night at midnight so that they have work that must be done on the weekend. The net result is that they were always on their computer. Students lack the general clarity on what their reading and homework assignments are.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Time is up.
With the handling of assignments and grading as opposed to in-classroom learning is unmanageable. Many teachers do not put aside.
Sorry.
Thank you, Kevin, for sharing. Next.
Next speaker, Tiffany Ketchum.
Let me know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Tiffany.
Hi. Hello, OUSD board, parents, teachers, and staff. My name is Tiffany Ketchum, and I'm a mom and advocate for my 4 children. We've been part of OUSD for 15 years. We have children this year that range from a senior to our youngest that are twins in 3rd grade. So we have 10 school years ahead of us still. We have children with special needs, including immune compromise, and although we really want them to be able to return to school because that's what's best for their growth, we only want to see OUSD start to slowly phase back in when it can be done so with the ability to keep everyone safe. I'm not sure exactly how this can be properly done without the proper financial supports to do so and everyone on a board to mitigate the spread. What is concerning to me is things like SDSU's total number of cases as of Sunday was 286 since the start of the semester. That is a huge number to have within a short period of time and contains many individual clusters. What factors into that is that you do not have the ability to control what individual families, staff, and students are doing in their personal lives outside of school. So until the cases in our county are in control so that families and staff all feel safe to return, especially our vulnerable populations, I don't think it's feasible for OUSD to return to in-person learning at this time, even though I want my children in school. I also have to be realistic and accept the changes among us to get through this together. Our family has lost 2 family members to confirmed COVID, whom were healthy and vibrant members of society before, and I know the ravages of this disease can have. And still, new things are being discovered about children with COVID that can lead to possible permanent damage to their systems. We do not have the real knowledge we need to make proper decisions at this time. So I'd like to implore the board to consider these broader things and to follow all CDC and CDE guidelines before considering any changes to our current system, except for meeting the unmet needs of our most vulnerable youth, including those with special needs, that OUSD is currently out of compliance with, and getting our current system functioning better for online learning to occur now in the meantime. I believe that a delayed, slow, and phased-in approach is best for all, and that our vulnerable populations and our school staff must be considered as well as the students that need to return sooner to meet their unique needs, whom are being the most negatively affected by the absence of traditional in-person schooling and supports. I'd like to encourage parents to make your needs and questions known, to seek answers from our school administrators and our board. Stay safe and get involved, but try to keep it positive. We're all in this together, and all voices need to be heard, especially parents and teachers who truly know how classrooms run. I would like to privately pull the attentions board to unresolved issues that our family is having and request your assistance to get to the bottom of it. Thank you for your time and consideration. I strongly support Mike Blessing for District 5. Todd Madison would be a huge mistake for our district. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Next speaker, Monique Combs.
Go ahead, Ms. Combs.
Thank you. Hi, and thank you for your time. I'm a special education teacher at the Adult Transition Program. I first want to say I know everyone's experience with distance learning is different, but I want to say that when it comes to my class, we are having huge success with my class and the support of my instructional assistants. We have at least 90% attendance every day. We learn, we bond, we're having fun. With that said, I want to make a plea to the district. As me and my 30 or so coworkers at ATP will be the first to return to school, teaching adults nonetheless. Please, please do not reopen until all safety protocols, supplies, and systems are completely in place. Opening without all of the plan, all of the supplies that we have in this plan, which I really appreciate, are in place, not only puts the staff and students, but also puts the community at risk. Please take into consideration the recommendations that have been put forth by the WARPs, and I know will continue to come through. And let's please right now show the community that we really care. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique.
Kathy Morgan.
Go ahead, Ms. Morgan.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kathy Morgan, and I am a first grade teacher here at Oceanside. This is my 21st year teaching, and boy, do I miss seeing my kids' faces walk through my door every morning. I never thought I would long for the noise of 6-year-olds, and a truly quiet classroom would be so hard to come to every morning. However, it is where I am every day doing my very best to teach 22 first graders through distance learning. To say it has been challenging would be an understatement. I also know how incredibly difficult this is for my students and their families. I want nothing more than to see each and every one of my students in my classroom, but we are not quite ready. I have been on multiple reopening committees discussing how and when we can safely return to in-person learning. This process needs to be thoughtful, gradual, and done with the safety of students and staff being the #1 priority. Every OUSD campus needs to be safe for all students and teachers before we return. All campuses need directionality on the sidewalks for coming and going, hand washing and hand sanitizing stations, safety measures in classrooms and offices, such as appropriate plexiglass for our front offices and dividers for our classrooms, new lunch and playground procedures, everything to protect our students and teachers. There is more than I just mentioned that needs to be done. And yes, the list is extensive, but it is possible. Once these measures are in place, we will be able to begin a gradual shift from vigorous distance learning to the greatly missed in-person teaching. In addition to over 2 decades of teaching experience, I am also a mother. It pains me to see my boys missing out on their first days of middle and high school, but I know that their schools are not ready. They will have their first day of 6th and 9th grade when it is safe to return. I am very excited and hopeful about what Dr. Soto shared about equipment and modifications that are inbound to our school sites, and even more excited about what Dr. Vitale's measured path forward said about all facilities having their safeguards in place before we return. The right thing to do is to take our time to create safer environments for everyone. I know that waiting is hard. Patience is certainly not my best quality, but it would be a shame to recklessly rush into a reopening of schools without the proper equipment and procedures in place. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kathy.
Rhonda Oliver.
Oh my God.
Go ahead, Ms. Oliver. Ms. Oliver, if you unmute, you're on to speak. Ms. Oliver, you've been promoted to a panelist. If you unmute your microphone, you'll be able to address the board.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we're able to hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to address the board, staff, parents. I want to just say that I'm very disappointed that there is not, again, a plan to reopen to in-person learning for our students. I have been patient. I want to applaud the teachers and administrators that I've been working with over the last 3 weeks and even prior to that to make this as successful as it can be for my 5 children, but it's not enough. We need to get back in school. Again, I'm very, very disappointed that there's not more of a plan in place for these children to return to school. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that our last, or do we have one more?
No, that is our last, unless Vanessa McCarthy has entered the room.
There's nobody in the room with the name Vanessa, the last name of McCarthy, except for Mr. McCarthy who already spoke. The combination of those 2 names and our phone number that was listed.
They might be using the same computer. Just throwing that out there. All right, do you see anybody on there or can we continue?
I think we're going to try to bring Mr. McCarthy back in.
Okay, well, wait a second.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so if my wife, Vanessa, come here. You want to speak? Go. Hello? You want to speak? Go. Yes. You know, this is ridiculous. This is wrong, actually, that you should hold a public meeting in this way where we are actually not allowed to speak. Can you get up here? You're up.
All right, can we start the clock when she starts speaking, please?
I'm here.
Great, thank you. We'll restart the clock.
I have been here the entire time. You called my name. I was here. You did not let me in.
I believe there was some confusion because it's under the same name as your husband. So
No,
I
it's
think,
not. I've
All
been
right.
on a separate call on my phone downstairs.
All right, we apologize. Would you like to speak?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that rather than give a big speech like everybody else has done, you know, I don't have a lot of confidence in the board, and I want to second what somebody else said at the beginning, and that was, you should all resign. You have done a horrible job at mishandling this entire thing from spring to now. You are disappointing our children. You are not following science. You're not following guidelines, and the media needs to know about how you have mishandled this entire thing. They should all know. You should be all exposed for what you've done. I love my kids' teachers. I'm not so happy with you guys, but I will say that the people I have spoke to that are at the schools that my 3 children are at have told me the same thing, have reiterated and backed up what I've just said, that you guys are mishandling this whole thing from start to finish. The fact that you do not have a reopening plan for our 6th through 12th graders is abhorrent. I think the media should know about that too. I think other school districts in our area have had reopening plans. They have put it out there. I have copies of them. And I just can't understand why you don't have a reopening plan for our school. Why it's taking you this long to even get a reopening plan without dates on the little presentation that you gave for K through 5. What's more is that while you make nice, oh, we're going to listen to what you say and take into consideration and acknowledge, that's all great. Those are all words, but what are you doing about it? You're going to listen to comments. You learn how to placate people who are angry and upset. That's all you know how to do. And my kids are failing. My kids are not doing well. Emotionally, they're not doing well socially. And that part of this plan, you're not taking into consideration. You're all worried about their physical safety, okay? Physical distancing, the mask, the PPE. What about the rest of their safety? What about their emotional safety? You cannot socially, emotionally support them on a computer. So I think you should all resign. Thanks.
Thank you. I believe that's our last one. So that opens it up for board discussion or any additional questions you have.
Before we move on, I do want to make a quick point to address the fact that we take a lot of pride in making sure that the public can have a voice in these board meetings, that you are speaking live for yourself, that we make every effort to bring everyone in, even though it is definitely not a perfect system, but it is something that we take very seriously. So I just want to let everyone know that it's on our minds always. And since we've been doing virtual meetings, we've been getting better at it and being as open as we can be. So I just wanted to address that.
Thank you, Eric. Would anybody like to ask questions or kind of share some information?
Okay, I just want to compliment staff and leadership on their special ed program. I know for a fact that some of the districts around us are not planning to bring back their special ed students. They're going to wait, and I've heard as much as a year. So I think this district is being phenomenal in that area. I do have a couple of questions. On page 35, nutritious service, you said meals will be offered at all school sites Tuesdays and Thursdays. Is that meals for the week? Before we were doing like 21 meals per week. Are we still doing that?
That will be the similar platform, Trustee Evans, that they will receive meals on Tuesday and Thursday to get them through the week. So on Thursday, they will receive meals for Thursday, Friday, Monday. On Tuesdays, they'll receive meals for Tuesday and Wednesday.
Okay, I have one more question. Actually, I have several more questions. Looking on page 40, the purple, I know that not just San Diego State, but other schools in our area, they have admitted students, and consequently, they've had a flare up of COVID. As we plow through this, and heavens forbid, we find ourselves with in that situation. Will we close schools or will we continue on? Is it going to be stop and go, or how do we, I guess, being a sailor, zigzag through this?
Mercedes, do you want to speak to that, or do you want me to? There is a matrix for that through guidance. And it's once you go back to school, it's infection rate by classroom, by school, and by district. So it's 5%. If 5% or more of kids in a particular classroom are infected, it closes down. If is the number 5% for a school, Mercedes, or 25%? 5%.
I think yeah, it depends on the number of classrooms. When we did the calculations, it's like 3 classrooms and the school closes.
Yeah, so it's a percentage of the school site as well for a school to open. And then if 25% of your schools, I'm sorry, to close, if 25% of your schools are shut down, then your entire district would shut down. But there are specific metrics on a case-by-case basis.
And to build on what Dr. Vitale said, that is one of the reasons that we've been so thoughtful about the cohorting of students, because by cohorting students, we are less likely to have multiple outbreaks in any one particular school. So that is less likely that more students would be asked to be quarantined over time. That's why the California Department of Public Health recommends that cohorting, so that we can ensure that we can keep as much of a robust system going for as much time as we can.
Okay. My one concern is that dealing with this virus is very challenging, especially when we do have high school students. I'm concerned that students are in classes or grades that are age appropriate. Instead of being high school being 4 years, we may have high school being 5 years or even more, because this is not going to go away in a year. I mean, let's be realistic. I think we need to prepare for that. That high school, we've been saying that education is going to be different. But we really need to really take in consideration that it may be different and not penalize students. Students who are in sports, students who are learning certain CTE programs, students who plan on going to college. We know that just San Diego State takes more than 4 years to get a degree on the average. Okay, so I think Oceanside and so many other public school districts need to focus on high school may be longer than just quote unquote 4 years.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. We definitely want to continue. Currently, students are able to take a 5th year of high school in order to complete their requirements, and that's definitely something we would continue to make sure that every student would be eligible to earn credits they need for a CTE pathway, be able to complete the A through G and their high school diploma, should that be what will help them furthest along in their educational journey.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. First of all, thank you all the teachers. We haven't said this yet, but I haven't said this yet, but thank you to all the teachers. We know your world's been turned upside down and you're working. Thank you to all the parents. We know your world's been turned upside down and you're working as hard as you can. We're up at nights crying tears over many of the same things. So just know that we appreciate you. We know that this has not been easy on anybody, and that includes our students. So, Mr. Moon, I had a question about the possible return to campus. If we have such an increased number of devices on campus, do we have infrastructure upgrade needs before we think about having large numbers of students back on campus?
Yes, all classrooms have and had connectivity prior to this. So we don't have any concerns about the connectivity in classrooms. We continue on a near daily basis to replace outdated wireless access points, add new ones, tune our network. We've got high-speed fiber between the high schools and the district. So infrastructure-wise, I think we're fully prepared for all students on all campuses to have a device.
And I'm sorry if this is redundant to someone who is professional in this area from someone who is not, but if 80% of a school is now on at the same time, we have the capacity for that to happen? Say everyone had a math lesson in the morning where they're getting on to asynchronous ST math or whatever the program may be. Do we have capacity for that many kids at one time to be signed on? And the flexibility that teachers will need to have kids go in and out of apps now that will be one-to-one or close to it on campus.
Yes, prior to this, there was still a substantial number of students connected to the network at any one time. I don't anticipate that we'll see substantial bottlenecks at any place. We do have E-rate projects in the pipeline to replace increase some speeds between the school and the districts. But all schools right now have adequate connectivity back to the district to accommodate a one-to-one environment.
Along with that, I know I've been hearing that County Office of Ed is providing more Wi-Fi or enabling homes to be able to access Wi-Fi. Are there any way to speed that up? One of the comments that I've received and phone calls I've received is the fact that students are not able to receive because they don't have Wi-Fi at home. They're struggling. How can the district kind of push that forward?
We have school sites reaching out on a daily basis to people that have indicated through survey that they need assistance with connectivity. Those orders are entered by a school, by an SCA site. Thank you, a school community advisor, who are in contact with the customers, the parents. They enter an order depending on if the order is going to Cox or to the county for hotspots. I enter those orders on a daily or sometimes semi-daily basis, send them to the appropriate vendor, and the vendor takes it from there. We do follow up with them to make sure they followed through. In the case of Cox, Cox is supposed to send out a self-installation kit to the customer within a few days of us sending them their order. In the case of hotspots with the County Office of Ed, we have a small shipment arriving sometime later this week and a larger shipment arriving on or around the 22nd of September. That's as good a deal as Cox or as the county could negotiate with Verizon. If individual school districts went to do the same thing, their experience would be worse. By aggregating through the county, we have the power of purchasing power, and they pay attention. Verizon will pay attention better to the County Office of Ed. It represents 42 or 43 school districts rather than when we were contacting them individually. So I know it's a delay. Everything that we're doing right now is delayed. It's trust me, it's not my intention to have delays, because the sooner we get things to people, the sooner we're all better off. But all I can do is report the facts and reality.
I understand. And again, compliments to staff and faculty for your diligence. I think this district is being phenomenal in what it's undertaking. Safety is our priority.
I know I'm going to go back to again with what Eric, Mr. Moon, with what Eric was talking about. We're looking at right now, we have a lot of staff currently at the school sites, and they're trying to do with our students and work with our students at home, and they're currently getting dropped and they're having issues. But if we put that many more students at one-on-one on those sites, how much worse is it going to be? And I know you've answered it in saying that it's going to be okay. But if we're already having issues and we're already having problems with just the staff being there, how are we going to, and what are we in the meantime doing so that when they actually go back, that everything is already in place?
Greg, I think this question is more about Zoom and Google Meet than it is our ability to.
Completely agree. It's a couple of variables. So by having all students back on site, we will remove the variable of the unpredictable connectivity at each and every student's end. So they'll all be back on our local network. There's less authentication traffic that needs to happen that way. Teachers that are having problems right now with a new Chromebook, 100% of those problems are associated with using Zoom. Zoom was not adopted as our district standard. We are patiently waiting for Google to up their game as far as Google Meet goes, and that will be our district standard. If Zoom is working for teachers, which I've heard from a number of them that it's working fabulously, then they should continue to use that. We will not be purchasing the premium version of it. We will be using their free version if a teacher wants to use that. But we have upgraded to the enterprise edition of Google for Education. As soon as Google rolls their improvements to Meet, then those features will be available to all teachers. It's currently available. The enterprise edition is currently available to all teachers as it sits right now. Google has set a timeline for September and October. All that messaging was sent to staff last week for their feature improvements. And so the connectivity problem, I wouldn't associate with the network. I would associate it more with the application. Also, I've asked our network staff to ensure that our network's tuned to optimally pass Google Meet traffic so that it there's no inhibition in that, and have reasonable assurance that that's actually already in place. But we'll take a look as the traffic increases. We'll take a look at the network traffic to make sure that it's being optimized and that those experiences are optimum.
Thank you.
So I don't have any questions, but I wear a couple different hats. One is I'm a parent of a middle schooler who's in a dual language program, which has presented a lot of challenges. But I know that I'm working with the teachers and with my son to get a handle on this distance learning, and it is working out in our family. I've had to make a lot of sacrifices, as I'm sure we've heard from many parents that has happened. I also wear a hat where I work with many other school districts with supporting the teachers and some labor management relationships up and down the coast. Many of those school districts are much smaller than ours. So it's really hard to compare apples to oranges. I just know that as a board member, taking this very seriously, safety is the #1 priority. Rushing people back into schools because it's not convenient to be at home with your child, or it's really challenging. We have to do better as a district to meet those challenges. We have to work together with our families and our students and our teachers and our staff and our community to help our students along through this challenging time. Like, we are in a pandemic. No one asked for it. It's not convenient. It's really scary for everybody. You know, I live by the beach. We have Oceanside. It was packed this weekend. It really concerns me watching these numbers, where we're going to end up in the next couple of days. I really want my son back in school, seeing his friends, experiences learning, seeing his teachers, but not at the extent where I put other people's lives at risk. So that's where I stand on that. I really appreciate the presentation and all the numbers. We did set a date to bring K-5 back, and I think communication moving forward with our families, especially our staff, knowing what's happening next. I would like to set a direction that we have more ongoing two-way information. I realize things keep changing, they keep moving, the county guidelines keep changing. So our information that goes out to families is going to change. I know sometimes we wait to make sure we're sure for something, but I think with the lack of information, people make up their own. That's how rumors start. As a parent, I want to plan when my son's coming back. I do understand in middle school, the way it's structured, middle school, and the number of contacts a teacher has, and my son coming home back to me, and with all my other family members, how, you know, there's too many unknowns to make that safe at this point. And I can accept that as a parent, as a board member. Safety is the #1 priority of our families, scholars, and our staff.
So I had a couple more general questions, so that kind of opens up the bag on the end conversation. Can I do a couple more quick nitty-gritty questions first? In the change to hybrid, how will that affect our enrichment numbers? Will we be able to expand, or will we have to halt our enrichment because it's a shift in service and we have kids on campus then? And then I'll go ahead for that one first, and I'll ask a follow-up.
I'm sorry, Mr. Joyce. I heard the first part of the question, which was about the expanded enrichment and whether we'd be able to maintain it. But then I'm sorry, I didn't hear the second part.
Let's go with that first.
All right. So yes, as we were developing our expanded enrichment protocol and process, Dr. Sparks and Ms. Wiggum identified classrooms and spaces that would not be used by teachers currently, so that when we went back to a hybrid space, there would still be space for the students to be in. So the students who are currently enrolled would then be enrolled in their classroom for the 2 days a week that they were with their teacher, and then they would be in their expanded learning. We're going to continue to look at how we can make sure we have as much cohorting as possible in that case, and make sure that we can continue to support them. But it is our plan to be able to do the wraparound on the other side.
Okay, and then functionally, we're looking at a return to hybrid for K-5. What does that look like for a student? So let's just pick a student and then kind of talk about what their week looks like and what the reality on the ground is with them at home and at school.
Sure. So let's take a student named Mason. The student Mason is in 4th grade. And he and his sister, Samantha, are assigned to be in the A group. So Mason and Samantha in A group come to school on Tuesday with their teachers. They have instruction in their language arts, their mathematics, and they have an opportunity to be at school in a smaller cohort, about 50% of what would typically be in a classroom, with it being an elementary, somewhere between 14 and 18 students in that particular classroom. Then on Wednesday, they would be at home working on their Seesaw or their Google Meets. Their teacher would have possibly a morning meeting with them. Their principal would have a morning meeting. And then on what we're thinking then on Thursday and Friday, the student would be at home being able to also have opportunities. We're thinking now for PE, for art, for morning meeting, for counseling, SEL lessons. And that was what Mason and Samantha. So families would be grouped on their A or B days together. Let's take a second family. Let's call this other family Susan and Mike. So Susan and Mike, on Monday, they would be at home. They would be working on their virtual learning. They would possibly have art or social emotional learning lessons, music lessons, PE for Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday, again, they would have virtual learning with a meeting with their principal and their teacher. And then on Thursday and Friday, they would go to school with their teacher, and the teacher would be with them again as the other families' kids were. So that's how it would look.
And is that the full day for 2 days a week?
Right now,
Are
we're
they
working
on-site?
with our so right now we're working with our staff to figure out through our workrooms what is most effective and safe. So one of the things we want to think about, as we talked about, is the protocols for the playground, for lunches, for moving students, and for supervising them. So we're looking into what would look like, and the work groups are working to identify what would be the best protocols.
And
so yes, full day is one of the things we're considering. And
yes, and our intention is to send out that schedule on October 5th so people understand what group they're in and what the week is going to look like. So families will have a 2-week notice before we actually cycle back or cycle into hybrid.
So while we're on that topic, I want to just state how important it is to take advantage of those 2 days in the classroom, because they are the meat of the education that those kids are going to get. And then I'm a little worried that they're not going to have contact with their teacher on 2 of the days. I know that they'll have enrichment teachers that they'll connect with, and I think it's great. It's a lot. If I'm thinking of my kindergartner or first grader, I have a kindergartner, but if I think of a first grader, second grader, anyone, that schedule break is a long 4 days because it's on one side or the other of the weekend. It just feels like a long break. And I know that there are some intricacies that come with that, because they have a whole nother group of students in that classroom that day. So I would just advocate for that as well. As a point to maintain just your learning community, right? And also to have both groups have some connection to each other through their teacher. So that's not really a question, just kind of a advocate. Then face masks being a requirement, we're going to require those of all students.
yes, that's correct.
And the temp checks was set up on a wall or a stand with the kids walking by it slowly or quickly. I can't remember which one it was described as. So is that outside of the school and they're doing that before they enter campus? I guess just can you walk me through that situation a little bit? I know that we're some time out from possibly implementing it, but what are you imagining now?
I can help you with that, Trustee Joyce. Yes, we are planning to implement this within the next 2 weeks when we believe these portable devices will be delivered. And it's the intent to check all students and staff prior to entering campus. So with identifying the entry points through our school sites, then we would have a point where each person would walk by this fixed object. Now, the temperature screen device is small in nature and would be clamped onto a fixed object, such as a tripod or a wrought iron fence, something to where a scanning of walking by, the temp is immediately taken, it's shown on the little device, and then either the individual, the employee, or the scholar keeps walking, and until it hits red or until it calibrate or until it shows the temperature is above the norm, then that's when that person needs to be stopped and identified and moved into this separate area to be addressed. But it is the intent that we could get through up to 70 per minute. And basically that's just a typical walking by as the machine just resets, recalibrates and goes back to zero and just takes the temperature as each person walks through. Did that help any?
It does. I'm trying to imagine. So 70 walking through in about a minute.
Quick.
It goes off and you're like, no, it was that guy. He was the one that set off the temperature. It'll be interesting to see. I'm sure that they'll get it because kids are pretty amazing at this kind of stuff, but I'm sure there'll be some working out of the intricacies of that of every piece of the plan.
I'm hoping that they do a video for kids on what to expect, because we, taking in consideration their social emotional learning and how school is different, and for especially our new kids that are in TK and K, I think that's going to be a huge thing that needs to be done.
Our video showing kids what to expect will be released on October 5th, along with the schedules.
Okay, so leveling in on the timeline, the first thought that comes up is equity. I understand that there are some limitations, and I understand that there are some unknowns. I am concerned about going another 3 weeks without small cohorts coming on to campus. Is the September 28th start date of that cohorting? So there are some, I have some specific questions about that. Are these students who are in special day classes, or is this including students that may be out in other classrooms but have significant behavioral challenges? Are they included in any of these cohortings?
So, Mr. Joyce, what we would be looking at is to identify students. As we know, students with special needs are all individualized, and so we would want to look at their individual program and what would be best for them. Visiting 2 special education classrooms in the last 3 days virtually, what I found is that some students have really blossomed in the virtual environment because they have felt less pressure of being around other students. So we would be working with our teachers, our coordinators, and the rest of our special education team to identify those students who would most benefit. Right now, our priority would be with our students who are English learners and our students who are mod to severe. So we'd have to look at that and make sure, and then of course, rolling in more students as we identified their needs.
And then can I ask why there's a delay between the cohorting and the related services with speech OT, APE? Right now, there's a projected week. Sorry.
Yeah, as part of our plan, again, we want to make sure that we're getting students used to the system, as Trustee Begin talked about, having students be able to understand what is going on. Right now, students are receiving services in a collaboration model. So a lot of this is to know that this is going on, but we want to make sure that their firm classroom cohorts are in place so that they can create that bonding, and then we'll bring on the other services.
And then my final concern is that October 19th is over, a month away, and the learning that's taking place for some of our younger students in the digital model is significantly harder to access. And so I would think if we have all of the materials, that's one of the big bottlenecks, right? So if we have all the materials by the end of September, and then we're gonna wait almost 3 weeks before, it just seems like a long out target date if the data is still going in the right direction. And I have no intention of putting our children and our families and our community in unsafe situations. Let me just start there. So what I would ask is that we consider that some of us have made a lot of sacrifices. In fact, everybody has in this situation, and our well of resources are different. So my family has been able to make some sacrifices to make it work, and there are lots of families that haven't. So I would ask that we collect more information about returning and about when we're going to return, and find out if we may still have families that don't have any interest in coming back this semester. So will they have a chance to enroll somewhere, or will there be options at their school site? What does it look like for them if they're feeling still unsure about it?
Yeah, so we know that families have a variety of different needs, and we know also that there are challenges very unique to each child and each family. So one of the things that we discussed is the opportunity to re-poll our families about what their feelings are now that they have a date, as what we believe today based on our metrics, our data, and the COVID research. So we will be putting out communication on over the next couple of days that on Friday there will be an opportunity for families to tell us what they feel about this and see how we can accommodate them with some different opportunities, including perhaps something at Surfside.
Okay, so the only reason I bring up a quicken return at all is because the numbers have gone down. We did. I looked outside Tuesday, see Labor Day. Sometimes I don't even go out on the weekends because it just causes me a little bit of anxiety that I don't need in my life, seeing other people out there with unprotected. But yes, it is very likely we're going to see a change in numbers. We should have that information after 2.5 weeks or so, if we're looking at science, right? So I think it'd be a really good idea for us to meet again before the end of the month to communicate updates. We'll have updated numbers by then. We'll have updated information about the return of all these things that are on back order that we've had to wait for. So that would be my suggestion, is to continue with the survey like you said, and find out what our families want, and then to meet again by the end of the month so that we can go through what hybrid learning is going to look like for our families and when they can expect exactly to return.
So we can look at holding a special meeting at the end of the month. Certainly we'll have an update after the 14-day window after Labor Day, and should have an update on all of our equipment that we're waiting for schools. So if we wait till the September 29th to have a special meeting, that would be great, as we could give a more clear update. And of course, the board can always give direction on changing any of those dates that we have laid out.
Eric, did you say that you wanted to have another survey? I couldn't hear.
Yes, to find out now that the last full survey, sorry for me to get on my way. The last full survey was in July. We've had lots of stakeholder meetings in between them, but the last full survey about what everybody wanted was in July. So I think an update survey will give us an idea about some of the services that we could offer. If we know we have kids that are not going to stay in, it doesn't mean we all of a sudden have extra space for all the teachers. They still need a teacher to teach them if they're virtual. It's not like bonus space, but but we will have an idea of how to meet their needs the best that we can. And unfortunately, it sounds like if it's a lot of people, then it may shake up some classrooms. But if it's a matter of feeling safe and being able to access education for the best for our kids, then that's probably would be my suggestion as the best bet for the for moving forward. So another survey that asked for that information.
The more information we have, the better we can
Effective at this
plan.
point. I think looking at statistics in terms of, what's being presented in terms of our numbers going down with COVID cases, I think we need to move forward in the path we're going. I think survey is taking money away from really needed materials and resources. And statistics show that with a survey, only if you send out 100 survey questions, whatever, 100 envelopes, you're only going to get back, less than 30. Surveys are really not that effective.
So where interested in return to a physical campus. They'll be watching our space.
Go ahead.
Again. So I think if there are families that do not want to return in person, they're going to be watching our space, and they will return a survey that says, I don't want my student to come back yet. I guess it's more than just a survey to find out. It's if we can offer them the option that best fits their family needs, and we have it in the district, then we want to give them the opportunity to opt for that, more than like a dipstick to find out where people are at.
So I'll just interject here for a moment. What our plan was tomorrow when we send out a communication with all of the dates, one of the things that we are going to have people clarify is if they did not like our return date of October 19th for K-5 hybrid, and they wanted to stay in a non-face-to-face situation, we are going to have a form digitally for them to fill out so that they could express that, so that we could plan for them to not return to a face-to-face experience via Surfside, and we could also staff that. So there's a lot of moving parts. So a survey would certainly give us information, but that is not a planning tool. So, and you didn't know about this, but that is one thing that we would like to put in our communication to give people the option to still opt out of face-to-face instruction, as we believe that there are families out there when they see this date, they will want their kids to stay in some kind of virtual experience. As I believe when staff sees this date, we have additional staff that is going to be very nervous about this date. And so if we can match the two, that would be a good planning process for us over the next couple of weeks.
Thanks for sharing. Do you have enough direction, Dr. Vitale, to move forward? Is that a trick question?
I just want to hear if there are any other board members that have concerns about the dates.
I don't think I have concerns so much about the dates, because I like the space. But my concern is, again, is if our stuff is not here, then we still need to make sure that we don't push forward until the stuff is actually here, because I want, and my goal as a parent is that the things would be in place so that when my kid is back in school, that it's safe not only for him, but for his classmates. So I think locking in these dates, as much as we would want to say and tell our families that this is what we're doing, this is the way it is, and we're locked into this. I think because there's so many unknowns, especially with getting things, you know, not just to us, but to other schools and other districts, because everybody's requesting the same things for their schools to be back. And my concern and my worry is that we're not going to have the things in place, and we're going to be going back unprepared and unsafe. And if we're looking at the science of everything, then I really do appreciate the next meeting date of September 29th, so that we can come back and have that conversation and make sure and even share with our families that we do have everything in place. I worry about our staff, like, you know, Dr. Vitale was talking about, that there are some that are not going to be happy with this date, but we want to hear from them too, and we want to give that opportunity. I'm usually not one for surveys at all, because there's a million of them going out, but a survey like that and that information being asked is very important for us to hear, because we need to hear from our families. They're the ones that are going to be going back and forth with their students, and they're the ones that are going to have the problem in their home if there's a problem at all. I do have a problem though with the thermometers, because I'm a very visual person. So I see first graders, kinder running by it just because it's fun and it's cool to do that. So see who can get past it without it beeping at them. So it becomes a play thing. So I have an issue and a concern that we're not going to always get a proper read on somebody. And then if that one scholar gets by, then what is the backup to that not happening?
So I'll just interject there. We're actually not required to take the temperature of students. We're just putting an additional safety measure in place. There will be staff at the thermometers watching that. And Trustee Alvarez, I believe that every child will walk 6 feet away systematically into the school, arms by their side, mask on, ready to go. This is what I believe that children are capable of doing in Oceanside Unified. So I do understand that concern, and I know that kids are kids, and it will be awkward for them to, you know, literally have to march into school. But we will work with them on those protocols so that they understand how to enter the school. And that is why, again, that is not required. It's just an extra level and an extra layer of protocol. It is required for staff, and we'll have multiple access points at the campus, whatever makes sense. Our schools are very different sizes. So if you talk about, you know, 50% at El Camino, that's 1,500 kids on a campus. If you talk about 50% at Del Rio, it's around 200 kids on campus. And so, again, students aren't required, but that is the number. Staff is required, and that could be anywhere from 30 to 150 staff members on any given day. So again, it's just another layer of precaution. And as part of our video, we'll, you know, demonstrate how that works, because I know it's hard to believe 70 people a minute. I kept asking, is it really 70 minutes? Is it really 70 a minute? It's really 70 a minute. It'll probably be, you know, a little bit slower than that, but it's going to be faster than the handhelds one at a time. So we're just trying, again, to put another layer of safety and also expedite the process at the same time.
Okay, let me clarify in terms of what I mean by surveys. I think it is extremely important that we have communication, you know, with the community, with parents, stakeholders, each other, staff and faculty. And I think that's the way to go. We definitely do need another meeting. We need to get our message out. And it has to be something really, you know, poignant and concise and consistent. So when I think about a survey, I'm thinking about this long questionnaire that people look at and put in the circular file. You know, I'm definitely in favor of communicating and definitely having two-way. And I think it's real important that whether we're using social media or Zoom or whatever, you know, we are being effective in communicating.
And on that communication note, though, my biggest thing is we're putting it out digitally. There's we have our families that do not work well with that or do not do it at all. So my concern is that we're going to miss the input and the feedback from them. So, but for families that are listening and that are out there, as a parent, and I'm guilty, very guilty of, when I signed up in Aries on my home phone, I put my cell phone in that spot and not in the cell phone spot, because it was way long ago when I first did it. And if you don't have your cell phone number in the actual cell phone spot, you will not get the text messages from the school district. So it's very important that you go back and you look at your Aries and put that information out there, because I was never told that. I was told that we were getting information by emails, by all these different ways, and by text, but I was never getting the text messages, and I myself had to figure it out. So I'm just worried about our families that do not have that communication and do not know or have not heard that. Please understand and know that you have to personally, on your own, go back in your Aries account for your child and for all your children and fix that problem so that you can actually get everything that way, so that we can communicate to all those families that do not have access to their emails or do not always look at their emails, because I know I'm guilty of that too as a parent. So please just go back and do that.
Matthew, you want to
Yeah,
chime
Trustee
in?
Alvarez, yeah, I would just say that was beautiful. Thank you so much. We talk about that a lot, and in our parent trainings, we talked about that extensively, and I can't thank you enough for bringing it up again. It is so important that you make sure your data and information is up to date in your Aries Parent Portal. If you're not receiving communications from your school, reach out to your school directly. That's the best thing that I've heard communications wise tonight. That was awesome. So if you're not getting that communication, reach out to your school, make sure that information is up to date. It's going to go out in a lot of ways. You know, as a district, we do share on social media, you know, and that's great. Some people meet us in that space. We actually have several thousand followers, which is great. We also make sure that we text out communication, we email out communication, we send communication via phone call in both English and Spanish. And then tomorrow, for example, we'll send out a recap of this board meeting and our discussion around reopening and COVID precautions. And we will be providing it in all of those ways, as addition to posting it on the homepage of every single school website and our district website. Our hope is that families are able to connect with that information in the time and the choosing that they're able to. Either it's right there on their device as a text, or it's by sitting down and visiting their school's website later that evening. But that by providing that information, they're able to connect with that at the time and space that they're able to. But yeah, going back to that information, thank you so much for bringing that up. It's huge. Aries Parent Portal. And if you're not getting communication, just reach out to your school directly. They can help you through that.
Thanks.
So just circling back to our special ed populations, our students with special needs, we had the September 28th set date for our most impacted students and getting them into small cohorts. And one of the reasons this is really timely is because we just got additional guidance on September 4th that we can have these small cohorts on campus with no more than 14 kids. And this is as low risk as we can get, right? And the in-person model, this is that we're going to create a most low risk environment while also finding a way to deliver their education. Because we have a tiered approach to how we're moving in, and because our hybrid is set to start on the 19th, I would want to advocate that we are looking at the kids that will be between the cracks of the moderate severe students in special day classes, and then all the other students who really have a hard time accessing digital education. And I'm thinking a lot of our kids that have behaviors, that have a lot of behavioral challenges, and the supports that you provide a student with those kind of needs are not easily translated to the digital environment. There are lots of things you can do with teaching families, and there are lots of ways that you can break up instruction, but you can only do but so much in a virtual setting. So I would ask that we have a really deliberate approach in making sure that that crack, that is a big crack between moderate, severe, and then all the other students, that we be looking at getting those kids appointment services, half-day services, whatever we could do, because the learning loss that they're going to suffer and that they have already taken a hit on is inequitable, and it's a month plus away more of that. And I just want to be very clear, it's not a huge amount of kids in our district, but it is a huge impact on those amount of kids and families, because you know, we hear different behavior stories from the home environment to the school environment, and oftentimes the kids will hold it together on the school site and then go home and have a lot of their harder behaviors. So now they're in that same environment where they have some of their harder behaviors and they're expected to learn. So I know that's a really long way around, but I want to know that staff is working on that, even though it's not technically on our list of things here.
Definitely, as we look through our work groups and as we investigate, we'll definitely be looking into that to see what the best approach will be to phase in. As you say, there is a gap between the two student groups, and we want to make sure. And I think looking also, you talked about the number of students, so we'll definitely look into the data about that, about how many are in each of those, just like we did in expanded learning, with looking at the tiers and trying to make sure that we're continuously moving and expanding. So thank you.
And I know that that's an additional challenge for those teachers who will still be doing their distance services, right? So we need to make sure that they have additional supports in place as well, because now they'll be juggling a whole nother set of expectations. So I look forward to hearing about that at our meeting later this month. I think I've exhausted.
You know,
And I'm just checking right now. Julie, Dr. Vitale, do you have enough direction from us and our questions to plan and do what you need to do?
I do. We'll be adding an additional meeting. I recommended September 29th. Additional communications, which I'll talk about with Matthew Jennings. We have desire to communicate so that we can plan for people who do not want to return in person at all. I would still like to move forward with that over an additional survey. That's the only thing I'm unclear about. If you want an additional survey of people's comfort level, that is one piece of information. But what we really need is information so that we can use that to plan, because it is not going to be a simple pivot to provide instruction for folks who do not want to return to an in-person model. But we would really like to provide that opportunity to people if the thought of this makes them just very nervous. So I just don't want those to be confused, but I'm sure that Matthew Jennings has already thought of ways to differentiate. Again, our communication about this meeting will go out tomorrow. So that's really where we would put the planning tool, and we could put a survey out later this week or early next week.
Okay, great.
So I think that summarizes, yes?
All right, that sounds good to me. That is the end of 6B. I'm going to ask for a 10-minute biology break. We've been sitting for almost 3 hours straight. Raquel?
So I think I asked something.
So for the survey, is that going to be asking if parents that are not comfortable coming back, are we going to be asking them about through the end of the semester or through the end of winter break, or is it going to be a year-long commitment to virtual learning? Are we asking them to make a commitment for the rest, through the end of the break or for the
Mr. Joyce, last time we asked for a year commitment. Again, our contracts with our teachers go for a year, and we want to make sure that we can have a continuance of services. And again, less disruption to the families as well.
We will develop a survey to get feedback. That will be something that staff will work on, and we will try to get as specific as possible to get the feedback from people after the news from this meeting tomorrow.
All right, with that said, I'm going to start a 10-minute break. So if we could have someone start the timer for 10 minutes, we'll be back at 9:01. Mr. Moon, will you start the timer, please? All right, we're going to go ahead and move on. We are on item 7A, personnel, ratification of memorandum of understanding between Oceanside Unified School District and the Oceanside Teachers Association. Staff presentation.
Hi, good evening, board members. I'm Todd McAteer, Associate Superintendent of HR. As you recall, last spring, the Oceanside Teacher Association and District were able to negotiate the 2021 master contract. However, since that time with COVID-19, it was necessary for us to come together and have another successful collaboration on working on some of the safety protocols, precautions, and procedures relevant to our work environment around the COVID-19 and some of the situations with that. So we are very pleased. We put together a 10-page memorandum of understanding. It's since been ratified by ODA. It really provides just an outline of many of the safety discussion items that were found in the presentation earlier tonight. And that reiterates and reflects the priority for our employees to come back and have safe working environments. So for your consideration is board approval of the MOU between the district and the Oceanside Teachers Association.
Great, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move approval.
I'll make that motion.
I'll
All right.
second.
Great, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Eric, did I get a vote out of you?
Aye.
Okay, so it passed unanimously. Sorry, you're on mute. All right, we're going to move to the next item, which is 7B, revised class specification, printing equipment operator.
Yes, we had a long time the printing equipment operator for the district. Michelle did a great job. He's since retired. And before he left, we picked his brain to update the job description so that it reflected the work done accurately. And so tonight for board's approval, we have an updated job description for the printing equipment operator.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
It looks good to me. I'll move approval.
Thanks, Mike. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a first and a second. Any more discussion? All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is 8, curriculum and instruction. A, approval of the learning continuity and attendance plan.
Thank you, Dr. Begin. So last board meeting, we had our public hearing of our LCP, our local learning contingency and attendance plan. And at this point, we would like to recommend approval of this plan as a communication and approval to align with state law.
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Eleanor. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Great. Any more discussion or questions? Nope. I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Moving to the next item, B, approval to purchase of equipment for the environmentally sustainable capstone at Oceanside High School.
Yes, due to our CTIG grant, we have the opportunity to purchase equipment that will allow our students to complete their pathways, to be able to enter into the energy and power technology sector of our Environmental Innovation Technology Academy. So we're very excited about this. It will provide materials and equipment for students to be able to be industry specific, ready for living wage jobs upon graduation.
I like to make a motion. I'm very excited about that. It's more than a living wage. Those jobs start like a $60,000 to $100,000 and more, beginning as an apprentice. So, yes.
Thanks. We have a motion from Trustee Evans. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Great. Does anybody have any questions or discussion?
I looked at the projects and I cannot wait to come check them out on campus.
Super. I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. So now we're moving down to 11, business. Super exciting. Anyways, item A, presentation and approval of the annual financial statement 2019-20 unaudited actuals.
Yes, good evening, board. Good evening, trustees again. Staff will be presenting the 2019-20 unaudited actuals, which is a comparison from what was budgeted to what was spent or received in the year 2019 through 2020. As you know, COVID did all kinds of interesting things to us in addition to our budget. So with that, to explain all of the details, I would like to introduce our Director of Fiscal Services, Tim Golden, and Mr. Golden will walk you through the unaudited actuals this evening. Mr. Golden?
Good evening, board and Superintendent Vitale. So like Shannon mentioned, we're going to go through our unaudited actuals, but I'll go to the next slide to get to the agenda here. So what we're going to do is, before we get into the unaudited actuals, I just wanted to take a minute to pause because we did also provide a second report, which was the 45-day budget revision that we did in the last board meeting, but we did go ahead and prepare the full SACS report, and we did post that on the website and provide it to each board member and staff. So we do have that, but moving forward, we have here the unaudited actuals agenda, and what you'll get from this presentation is that comparison between the estimated actuals and what the unaudited actuals are. So we're looking at changes in revenue, we're looking at the general fund comparison, we're looking at the other items here, the components of the ending fund balance, as well as our forecast, our 3-year forecast, which we always refer to as that multi-year projection. And then at the very end, we'll go ahead and cover the next steps, but we'll look at the next slide. So looking at the comparison here, we're going to show you multiple columns. The first column there is going to be the adopted budget, followed by the estimated actuals. So this is what we were anticipating things to come in at the end of the year. And then that third column there is the unaudited actuals. That's how they truly came in. And then the difference that you'll see in the far right column is going to be the difference between the estimated actuals and the unaudited actuals. So you'll see that variance there when we're looking at revenue of about $702,000. The expenditures decreasing by about $8.2 million, leaving that net change to the fund balance of the $8.9 million. And as the expenditures decrease, the reserve requirement also decreases. But we'll dive in a little bit of the details on the next slides. So looking at the changes in the revenue, as we mentioned, that $702,000, the LCFF amount is going to come from some adjustments as well as some revisions to P2. So as we're continuously updating our reports, there's slight adjustments that happen in terms of funding, but then you'll see a decrease in revenue of the $2.4 million. This is very common when you look at our federal, state, and local amounts, because those are restricted dollars, and how we budget those is we budget as if we're going to expend all of them in the year. And then if those items aren't truly expended by the end of the year, most of them can just carry into the new year, where they then get spent into that year. So that's typically where we'll see differences with federal, state, and local funding, and in terms of revenue, and also the expenditure side. But primarily here with the federal programs like Title I, Title II, Title III, some of those restricted programs, that's where the source of those changes came in. The state, that's where that CalSTRS on behalf, which you've probably heard me mention before, but it's the state payment of the STRS portion for the employees, and we have to recognize it. It's a pass-through transaction. So we recognize revenue that we really technically don't receive, and then we recognize expenditures that we truly don't expend. So it's a pass-through, it's a break-even. Those should have no net effect on our bottom line, but the numbers get updated at year end every year, so there's going to be volatility with that specific line item, and it was about that $3 million amount there. And then the final item there is the local, and that's going to come primarily from donations that came in at year end that just hadn't been spent yet, and so those will get carried over into the new year as well. But moving to the next slide, the changes in the expenditures, and as I mentioned before, with those restricted programs that we're budgeting the entire amounts in those current years, as those amounts don't get realized, then those budgets also will carry into the new year. So what happens is some of these budgets we reduce. So when you look at this $1.2 million here from the certificated salaries, a majority of that is coming from the restricted side of the budget. But you'll see there Title I, through Title IV. It's many of those title programs, those restricted programs, where the variance is going to be shown there. The same applies to kind of the salaries and benefits, but we did see the workers' compensation. We had some abatements where we received some money to offset. So some of our expenditures came in a little bit less than they normally would have. And then that CalSTRS on behalf, that's under the benefits tab there. That's going to be a majority of that line item in terms of changes. As we look down the list here, books and supplies, and then services and operating, this is the largest section where the variances are going to come from. And part of that is definitely going to come from unspent grants. So as we have items budgeted in the books and supplies, if those aren't realized, like I mentioned, then they'll get carried into the new year where they'll then get expended. But in addition to that, with the books and supplies and also services and operating, during the time where our COVID remote or distance learning was happening, as many people have mentioned earlier, the supply chain has been deeply impacted by this. So in terms of accounting, we can't actually realize expenditures unless we receive the good or the service by June 30th of every year. So any of those items that we were expecting to expend, if we didn't receive the actual good or service by June 30th, it can't technically be realized until that next year. So there's going to be some wiggle room here with things that maybe we had intended to purchase, but we actually maybe just didn't receive it because of all these delays in the supply chain. And then finally there.
I'm sorry, Timothy, I'm going to stop you before, because this is accounting and I am very likely to forget what you're talking about. So you said we have some wiggle room there. Do we have any idea about how much we have ordered that didn't come in by the 30th? Is that going to be like $1 million worth of wiggle room? Is it?
Really what it comes down to is those items at the very end of the year, we canceled some of those POs because we weren't going to receive them. We could probably pull a report to see which items we canceled, but it will depend on the type of expenditure it was. If it was an unrestricted type of expenditure, or if it was a restricted program, like if we were ordering something for Title I, those are two different kind of buckets, the way you look at them. And in this presentation here, they're lumped together. So it's just one total amount there. But there would be a way, there's no wiggle room in the sense that, you know, can we reorder them? Yes, we can, but it would have to be in the new year, and it would be against the new year budget, if that makes sense. The next item would be the capital outlay, and that's just, like I said, some of these different things that are going to be back ordered. It's not, this one's not a lot, it's just 39,000, but that's going to be what's making up the total amount of changes from what we were anticipating to what actually was realized by June 30th. And then we'll go on to the next slide. And this will be the components of the ending fund balance. So it's going to show you the changes from one to the next. And primarily on the first line here, the non-spendable, we did have a good amount of prepaid items, which that is going to come from when we're paying for a service or a contract prior to July 1st. So the contract is actually for the 2021 school year, but we had to pay for it in June or potentially before in order to get special pricing. This often happens with digital resources where they'll give you better pricing if you pay them at the beginning of the contract so that you can secure that, that discount. So that's what's going to make up a good chunk, about 2.8 million of that 3.32 million there, or 3.3 million there. That's what is going to make up that non-spendable. The restricted, this is going to be where I was talking about earlier. This is that restricted amount of money that is going to be coming from the title programs, Title 1, 2, 3, and many of those other items. The committed, that's the post-retirement money that we always commit. And then we have some of the assignments that we had for the, and these are all as of June 30th. So these aren't going to be the 2021 assignments. These are all assignments that we had for 1920 going into future years. So at this point, we had the early retirement plan that we still have that we're paying, as well as that technology plan that Greg was mentioning earlier. So that money all comes in here, and that's where you'll see the variances for each of those line items. Like I mentioned earlier, reserves are going to be slightly down since overall expenditures were down. And we can go to the next slide, please. And so here what we'll cover is the multi-year projection, which, as I mentioned, is that 3-year forecast going into the new year, going into 2021 now, 21-22 and 22-23. So here's a look at each of those projected budgets as a result of the new beginning fund balance. So we had, as a result of all of those unaudited actual numbers, we got an updated number in terms of what our beginning balance will be. And that number is going to be that 37 million. And as you can see here, we've looked down our revenues for each line item, expenditures, and we are looking at a little bit the deficit here at the net change in fund balance. And one of the things to highlight is that there is no additional reserve or additional reduction to meet our board reserve, the 5%, which we had in other presentations, but we will have that in years 2 and 3. So in year 21-22, we will be looking at some additional reserve, additional reductions to meet that board approved 5% reserve. And what I wanted to outline here is you will see a drop off in some of these revenues from year to year. And that's primarily because in the current year, 2021, we do have an ADA hold harmless, but that hold harmless is only funding us on that prior year. It doesn't give us each year a hold, an affected hold harmless. We go back to our normal funding in the very next year. So that's why you'll see a drop off from 2020 to 2020, 21 to 2021, 22. That's a lot of 20s in there, but that's where that adjustment is from year to year on the revenue side there. And then you got different things like our pension increases and changes. So those are all factored into the expenditure budgets there. We'll move forward onto the next slide, please. And this is going to show, now we've showed the 3-year forecast there in terms of the revenues budgets and expenditure budgets. And we'll look here at the components of the ending fund balance for each of those years. Now we're taking our stores inventory and our non-spendable line items, and those will remain constant through each year, the projection. And our restricted balances, you'll notice that we're starting to spend those ones down. That's how we typically try to budget those, is spending our restricted dollars hopefully first. And that's why you'll see a decrease across that line item. And you'll see the assignments here for the facilities, as well as that's the long range facility master plan, the technology plan, some math textbooks and professional development, and then that potential litigation that that many districts are keeping in the back of their mind. And that brings us to the reserve for economic uncertainties. And it looks like the numbers didn't populate in the second and third column there, but it's just around that ballpark there, in that $11.4 million range. But one of the things to note here is that the ending fund balance is dwindling at a rapid rate here. And you'll notice in year 3, we're looking at a negative ending fund balance. But with that said, we are continuing to update the budget to get the most accurate projections that we can out of the system, so that we are ensuring that we're giving you the best numbers that we possibly can bring forward. But I wanted to highlight that. And then now that we've looked at the 3-year projection as well as the ending fund balance projection, we will move to our next steps. And in looking at the next steps here, we want to continue that partnership with SDCOE so that we're maintaining compliance and transparency. So we're in constant communication with them to make sure that they're reviewing our numbers as well. And in addition to that, like I mentioned, we're going to be preparing the first interim financial report. And with that comes a larger staffing budget update. So we will be looking at everything that we had brought from prior reports. We'll be auditing all the staffing information and getting everyone a budget update with all the latest numbers that we have. But that would be the ending of the unaudited actual presentation. But I will be available for any questions if anyone had any.
Thank you. Will the interim budget take into consideration the savings similar to the ones we had at the end of the year that we'll be saving on electricity and water usage and all those things? Since we saved $5 million from the March to June space, I assume it wouldn't be that much because now we have some staff on campuses, and but there should still be some savings and maybe from our projected first budget.
Right, and that's one of the line items that I'll be particularly paying close attention to, and I've mentioned with Shannon before, actually the board meeting even, is that I want to watch the trend in some of those utility bills. I do think our budget was a little bit high on that end as of last year, so I wanted to follow it to see if it's truly because we had staff that really weren't and students that weren't really on the campus during that time, or whether it was, you know what, we're potentially projecting an increase too large on some of those bills. So that's one of the trends that I definitely am going to be on the watch list, and it will be updated in addition to the staffing budget.
Okay. Are there any other big pieces that we're looking, like the state, I guess right now we're on a hold harmless. So if they were to do some kind of slow tiered response where we'd come off of, so there wouldn't be such a cliff, you know, assuming that we are continuing to lose some scholars per year due to all the factors which we've highlighted in other meetings before, that would be something we want to be advocating for.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend any and all advocation that you can do, especially with the state in terms of giving us a little bit of a cushion as we go across this, because many districts are dealing with a lot of enrollment issues. They're dealing with a lot of attendance issues as well. So any baseline that we can get that will help us kind of ease this cliff that many other districts are facing the same challenge. So it's not just us in this alone. It's very impactful for many districts. So if there's any advocacy that you are able to do, or parents, everyone really is encouraged to try to do what they can to help encourage the legislators to help us with dealing with this pandemic, really.
Thank you.
We need to make a vote. If you guys have no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move approval.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Do we have any more questions or discussion? All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of adopting the unaudited actuals?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that moves them unanimously, 5-0. And now we're moving to the next item, 11B, adoption of resolution 07-2021, adopting the appropriations GAN limit 2019-20, actual and 2020-2021 estimated. Lots of 20s there.
Yes, agree. Again, this is a compliance document that goes in alignment with our unaudited actuals. The GAN limit ensures that spending is at the set appropriation level due to the state excess revenue. So this is our compliance document that goes in compliance.
I'll move approval.
I have a second.
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any discussion or questions? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. So moving to our next item, which is my favorite. Item 13, public comments on non-agenda items. It looks like we have 4 individuals. I'll turn it over to Anne.
Our first speaker, Elizabeth Reeves.
Ms. Reeves, you're available to speak now.
Yes, great, thank you. So good evening, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Reeves. I have 2 children in elementary school within Oceanside, and I apologize, this probably would have been better earlier, but I'm new to this system. I work in public health and I'm active duty military, as is my husband. And so like many families with essential workers or other challenging circumstances, we have to rely on outside assistance during the day to allow our children to participate in virtual learning. And my concern is perhaps specific to elementary age children and in regards to determining the proper balance for participation, attendance, and grading. I'd like to feel a little bit more confident that my children will have the ability to learn, but also be assessed on their own abilities and understanding rather than on my ability to facilitate all their assignments. Specifically, I have concerns that those in early education are really dependent on others to participate because assignments now include going to websites and downloading or uploading information and reading sometimes technical instructions. And for our children who depend on group childcare facilities, which must balance the individual schedules of every child on site, it could be a significant challenge to keep up with the schedules when they involve additional teachers or special classes like PE or music and a variety of interactive programs. I think it's probably quite reasonable for secondary level students and even upper elementary to maintain expectations as they can generally work independently, but younger children don't get emails, they don't get texts when schedules change. Those with language barriers don't always follow the teacher's directions well enough to perform the daily independent work. And our childcare facilities have to assist in managing passwords and logins, multiple programs and multiple children to be able to understand what's due at any given moment. So I thank the school system staff for working really diligently to ensure access to a wide variety of curriculum items for the school year, which I trust works well for many students and families, but I would recommend some additional options for our youngest learners. For example, maybe establishing a baseline level of participation to satisfy requirements that could allow for more flexibility for families who have competing needs. Our younger students are not the ones we're really as concerned with about skipping school on their own. Their absences are nearly always a reflection of their parents' needs, and they shouldn't be held liable when the parents can't fully support a full virtual schedule. And additionally, providing alternative options for independent and homework completion that's paper-based could make the young learner and their caregivers have a clear picture of what's required and when is it due. Flexible due dates could also be helpful for those of us who must wait until nights and weekends to be able to fully provide learning support and oversight of assignments. There's many children who are not able to remain in their own home during the day with a dedicated adult guardian who's not already occupied with their own employment or care for non-school aged children. And I would just like the school board to keep this in mind as they plan for future requirements, the same way you maintain an astute awareness of concerns like the digital divide and food insecurity. I'm certain the issue isn't unique to military members.
Thank you, Elizabeth. You're out of time.
Okay. Thank you.
Next speaker, Tony Menard.
There's nobody in the room named Tony Menard.
Next speaker, Michael Mitchell.
Stacy, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Michael.
Okay, perfect. Hi, I'm Michael Mitchell, a guardian of two kids here in Oceanside Unified School District. What I wanted to speak on tonight is about the new proposed bond measure that is going to be voted upon this fall. And my viewpoint right now, I'm neutral to voting no for this new bond measure. And my reasoning for it is this, is that for the first two bonds, I voted yes. And particularly back in 2000, when the first one was advertised to the residents of Oceanside, it was advertised as, this is going to be, good for the students and for the scholars, and it's going to help modernize most of all the campuses here in Oceanside. Then another administration came to us and said, hey, we didn't have enough funding for the first one, and we need a second bond to help complete the projects that weren't completed with the first bond. And I voted very happily yes for both bonds. And now my fear is this, is that we have a third bond that you're asking myself and the citizens of Oceanside that's inside of the boundary of the Oceanside Unified School District, and you're asking us to vote for a third bond. And my fear is that it's not going to cover all the projects that is needed. So we're close now to $400 million. That's almost $500 million. And there's no guarantee now that all the projects and all the school sites will be covered. And on top of all that, with a lot of the existing architecture, I've poured over and I've looked over all the architectural plans and the designs. A lot of the designs are back from 2008, 2009, and I'm not very confident that a lot of the designs and all the architecture plans are current or relevant for 2020. And so with these concerns right now, my position is I'm voting no for this new bond, and I'm not on board right now for this new bond measure for those reasons. And I thank you for letting me speak this evening and respectfully disagreeing for this bond measure.
Thank you, Michael.
Next speaker, excuse me, Todd Madison.
Go ahead, Mr. Madison. Ms. Madison, you've been promoted to panelist. You've been able to speak for about 45 seconds now.
Oh, Greg, there we go. Thanks. So Todd Madison again, I'm sure everybody listening knows I'm a candidate for school board. Oceanside has some great schools, exceptional teachers, caring staff. Unfortunately, over the years, we've seen the district consistently ignore the clearly expressed wishes of both parents and teachers on some very big issues. Our teachers have been doing their best at distance learning. There's no question it's a Herculean effort, but it just doesn't work for all situations and all kids. Last week, I walked through a neighborhood just across from Lowe's. It's a neighborhood of hardworking people. I'm guessing a lot of people there need to have two earners at work and rarely have the luxury of a stay-at-home spouse or a job that allows them to work from home. I asked one woman there, how is distance learning working for your kids? Her answer was, how the heck am I supposed to know? I just got home from work. My kids have been home all day studying. She used air quotes, and I have no idea what they're doing. The difficulties that families like that are going through is something I find distressing. There's nothing even the best teacher in the world can do to change that. I've now stood in front of the board at least 38 times in the last 5 years, and in those appearances, I've repeated over and over again advocacy for the priorities that parents and teachers have said are important to them. Parents and teachers want smaller class sizes, enrichment classes for disadvantaged and advanced kids, better technology and instructional materials, more facility maintenance, and a bunch of other things. But why don't we see any of that being done? Since 2012, funding has gone up over $5,000 a student at a rate over 3 times faster than inflation. The district has repeatedly chosen to ignore the priorities of parents and teachers in favor of using the money for its own priorities, usually higher pay and benefits. It's not a pandemic-related issue, as was said earlier. This is an issue that existed long before COVID. And of course, here we see the district also disregarding the numbers showing what parents want again. Perhaps it's time we put someone on the board willing to stand up and speak out on behalf of those parent and teacher priorities. I would encourage anyone who wants to join me in that effort to remember Todd Madison when you vote this November. You can go to toddforkids.com. That's Todd4kids.com. Thanks.
All right. Do we have any more speakers, or does that conclude?
That's it, Stacy.
All right, thank you. So on item 14, any board or staff discussion as we finish up the night tonight?
Just thank you again to everyone who's been pushing through the ambiguity. We're working on it, and we're going to make sure that kids are safe and they're learning.
Well said, Eric.
I just want to thank all the staff and all our teachers that have been working continuously, just nonstop on everything. You've done a lot. I mean, we've put you under the gun for a lot of things, and I thank you for just stepping up and just being there for our families and doing what is needed for our scholars. So I applaud you all. I really do.
Again, I just want to say thank you to staff and faculty and everyone very much involved with this as we move forward. And again, our primary concern is safety, as well as providing quality education under circumstances. I also would, in each of our own individual way, remember the folks that are affected by the fire north of Alpine. that we, at least for a moment, give them a thought, a positive thought.
Thank you. Eleanor? Mike, would you like to finish up?
Just thank you, Stacy, for doing a great job for me tonight. I am not in any way on COVID-related illness at all. Nothing confirmed. I just said I had some temperature earlier this week, and I have been battling that. So I don't want to mislead anybody out there. But I want staff to know I appreciate the work they're doing. I want the teachers to know we appreciate the work they're doing. The board's going to do everything we can to keep it safe for the kids and the families, the teachers and the staff. It's not easy, but we'll all get through it. So thanks.
Well said. On that note, I don't have a gavel, darn it. I will adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you for the over 400 people that joined us tonight. 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 Joined us tonight.